Alright, for today's critical thought, we're going to be returning to the topic of collectibles in game design. Now, collectibles can be the various baubles, MacGuffins, you name it, that have appeared in games since the early days, from stuff like fashion accessories in Donkey Kong, fruit in Pac-Man, the Golden Key in Adventure, and many, many more. Now, their purpose and functionality has changed and evolved over the years. When it comes to most games, especially those of today, collectibles tend to fall into a side quest or side upgrade category, such as the now famous agility orbs in Crackdown, the upgrade crates in Just Cause 2, whatever we called it in, I think, Shadows of Mordor, or have like the elf sigils. And again, there are just a lot to talk about. Now, in the early days of the game industry, collectibles were used both as a form of score chasing and sometimes as a form of extra lives or health pickups. Of course, big example would be Sonic the Hedgehog with picking up rings, and of course, for score chasing, all the coins that you found in Super Mario. In these cases, the collectibles aren't really the driving purpose of the play. In Sonic, as long as you have one ring, you are technically safe from death. And just having more gives you a little bit more of a buffer when it comes to trying to recapture them when you get hit. Now, some clever game designers will use collectibles either to lead players to secret areas or to possibly lead them into a trap. So just having like coins or items standing ever so precariously over a pit that you have to ask, can I get it or not? Mega Man 2 has some very trollish items in the, I think it was Quickman or Flashman stage, where you have the deadly laser beams coming from left to right, and they put an extra life just close enough that you think you can get it, but still far enough away that if you try to get it, you're going to get killed and lose a life in the process. Now, as things evolved, we've seen some developers go for like bonus modes or additional functionality to collectibles. For instance, the many shmup examples or shoot 'em ups will have collectibles that give you unique power ups or upgrades for your ship, games like Ghosts and Goblins, and so on. In this case, the collectibles not only will have a score chasing purpose, but they are also important towards the gameplay. As we've talked about before, when it comes to the shmup genre, many of them are built around a perfect run kind of mentality. As once you get yourself fully upgraded, it becomes very easy to beat the game, but if you die and lose your upgrades, you're kind of in trouble. Now, over the years, like we said, with game design evolving and things growing, collectibles today usually serve one of two big purposes. Typically, we see them in the form of a side quest. Everything from the flags in Assassin's Creed, of various, I can't even remember what they were in Mad Max, upgrade crates in Just Cause 2, and oh, a really good one, the Riddler trophies in the Batman Arkham series. In this case, the collectibles are integrated into the gameplay as a form of a side quest or an additional challenge, but aren't directly tied into playing the game itself. If you want to go through Batman, for instance, you don't need to collect those Riddler trophies. You can go from beginning to end and just beat the stuffing out of all the bad guys that way. But they serve an additional thing to go after. Now, in a lot of cases along these lines, the collectibles will become a form of a secondary progression, either in the form of having their own unique upgrade trees, or just giving you the game's universal experience that you can then apply to whatever you want. Going back to Batman, for instance, I made heavy use of the Riddler Trophy experience to quickly level Batman up. Same goes for the whatever it was in Shadows of Mordor. I think Saints Row, I think, had a few collectibles. Again, it's in a lot of games. But the big question, what was kind of brought up a few days ago in a comment from a fan, was what makes a collectible good or bad? And I think it really comes down to how you want to use it in your game. In some titles, like we said, the collectibles. One second, let me just get myself oriented there. In most games, the collectibles are simply used as a secondary form of progression. Now, in this case, the collectible itself doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things by the fact that if you play the game enough, you're simply going to get all the upgrades you need. For a collectible to matter, in my opinion, it usually will have to apply an immediate benefit. And the example that we used last time that I want to bring up here again is the difference between Crackdown and Grand Theft Auto. In the recent Grand Theft Auto games, there's always a random collectible spread throughout the world. In Grand Theft Auto 3 was the mysterious packages, Grand Theft Auto 4 pigeons, I'm sure Grand Theft Auto 5 has one as well. And in each one of the games, what Rockstar did was, as you collect certain threshold numbers or hit certain points of collecting them, you'll get a special upgrade, usually in the form of permanently unlocking a weapon back at your safe house or somewhere. The problem, though, is you're going to go a long time without seeing the benefit of that upgrade. The counterexample, of course, is Crackdown with the form of the agility orbs. In this case, every time you picked up an orb, it granted you the special experience for your agility rating, which improves speed and jumping. But each one also passively increased your max jumping height. The level 1 orbs a little bit, the level I think 3 or 4 orbs a little bit more. So each time you picked up an orb, you were improving your character. Again, we're talking about like very little minuscule upgrades, but it still adds up over time. But you're getting the benefit from it right from the get-go, as opposed to saying, pick up 10 agility orbs and we're going to increase your jump. And this is actually another really good psychological trick. Because what they could have done with Crackdown was say, give you the same value you would have gone from 10 agility orbs, but you wouldn't get them until you've picked up all 10. You're still getting the same thing, but the psychological trick is different. By getting the result or the reward immediately, it motivates you to say, okay, I did this and I got better all of a sudden. Let me go find more. And we talked about this before when it came to the completionist side of achievement hunting and questing in video games. But it is better to give the player 10 quests that require you to do 10 things rather than one quest that requires you to do 100. Even if the rewards are the same, you want the player to feel motivated to keep going. And the best way to do that is to always provide an immediate benefit to them. Now, with that said, though, another form of collectibles that we've seen over the last few years has been in the form of additional challenges. And this has become a mainstay of a lot of indie games, especially those built on platforming, speedrunning, and even puzzle solving as well. You'll have the general flow through the level in one way, but then there's just always that one little collectible way off the beaten path, or maybe it is on the harder route through the level, and it's always challenging you to go after. And again, there have been many examples of this. Some of the big ones would be stuff like Super Meat Boy, Bit Dot Trip Runner, and I am sure most of you can think of more examples. In this case, the collectibles themselves are not a guide to getting through the level or providing a bonus reward. They are simply there as an expert reward, or I'm sorry, they're not there as a reward in terms of the main game. They are there as an expert reward. So this is a kind of a way of, again, designing a game around multiple skill levels. A casual player is not going to care about that one bandage in Super Meat Boy that's over a pit of lava. They just want to get through the level. So, this is meant for people who want that additional challenge. And in many cases, these kinds of collectibles will be essentially set up on their own separate difficulty curve compared to the base game. We've talked about this before with the concept of subjective difficulty, or designing a game around multiple skill levels at the same time. In the Mario Galaxy series, there are always going to be additional red coins or harder to reach stars in the earlier levels. They will require advanced knowledge, but you don't need to do that if you just want to get through the game normally. They're there for expert players as both a reward for mastering the game as a way to speed up progress. Because instead of having you do more levels to get the same number of stars, you're just going to do all the advanced stuff and get through the game quicker. And that's a very interesting form of collectible design. Because again, it's not about you actively rewarding the player for going after it. You're basically just throwing down the gauntlet and saying, oh, you think you're good at the game? Now try getting over here. With that said, though, it still requires a careful attention to detail when it comes to designing your game. Specifically by the fact that the reward still needs to mean something, and that, I think, is the key point for today's critical thought. Regardless of how you design the collectibles, good collectible design has to provide an immediate benefit for the player. This is why a lot of the older games that just throw hundreds and thousands of, again, you name it. I've seen games that use diamonds, pieces of fruit, yarn balls, you name it, that when you're just throwing all this at the player, it just simply becomes noise. And a lot of these games, you pretty much wouldn't even miss a beat if you just remove the collectibles outright. When you're trying to design the collectibles to matter to the player, they should provide something immediate. Now, with that said, though, for games today that have moved away from the live systems of older and retro games, it's kind of hard to instill that value unless you go for more of the secret collectible, or in some cases, the completionist. Going back to the independent space, we've seen many indie platformers use collectibles as a form of gating levels, saying there's 100 keys in this level, and you must collect at least 50 of them to open up the door. Or it's done in a persistence system, saying, let's say out of 5 worlds or 5 levels, you must collect 300 rubies, and that will open up the way to the boss. Again, the benefit is made clear to the player, although in this case, it's still kind of you're playing the long game instead of something immediate. Now, for those of you watching this, I'm curious, what do you think are some great examples of collectible design? And no, you can't use the Riddler trophies or the Crackdown agility orbs, because I've already gone to them. Now, when it comes to wrap things up, one last point I want to bring up. If your collectibles are going to actively benefit the player, as in the form of the agility orbs, the upgrade crates from Just Cause 2, and again, just a lot of them in modern open world games, you have to give the player a means of finding them. You don't just want to say, here's a wide open area, just wander around, you'll find them. Especially if they are key to upgrading your character. In Just Cause 2, for instance, the upgrade crates were the form of currency you used to upgrade your weapons. If you didn't find them, you're going to be in deep trouble there. So in this case, you have to give the player something, and many open world games will turn this into an actual upgrade, saying, at level 2, you'll be able to find or automatically search for crates within a select distance. And then, let's say, fully leveled, you just now see everything on the map. Or in Batman, or in the Arkham series case, once you track down the Thug or the Riddler map or whatever that you hack into, you now see all the Riddler trophies and challenges on the map. Again, at this point, it may seem like you're kind of cheating or you're throwing the player a bone, but if you're actively trying to make the player get engaged by this, then they have to know that it exists. And I know this last part should be very obvious, but it has to be mentioned. If you're going to do collectibles in this way, as in having a set number in your world that have a benefit to the player, you have to tell the player how many there are that exist. I know it sounds very stupid, but it's good to let the player know that, oh, you found one, there's still more out there, rather than let them just guessing, going, am I done? Do I need to stay in this level more? And most developers, I think I haven't ran into a developer yet who hasn't done that, but I just wanted to mention it here. And this goes for, again, either small collectibles or those that are tied to a progression or bonus system, especially the bonus stuff. You don't want to have secrets on top of secrets. That's just going to drive people crazy. But with that said, we're going to wrap up today's critical thought here. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And let me know if you have any suggestions for future vlog topics. But until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and come back nightly around 10 Eastern for regular game streams. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on game design topics, be sure to check out game-wisdom.com. You can follow me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates from me throughout the day. And be sure to check out our Patreon campaign. You can find us on Patreon under GW Bycer for ways to not only support Game Wisdom, but you can get access to our Discord channel where we'll talk game design topics, as well as allow you to vote for our Saturday night grab bag stream. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the next video here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel.